Hello everyone. It's been a minute. It's been a lot longer than I was expecting it to be, just because the year kind of completely went by and then all this stuff happened and then YouTube kind of ended up getting away from me. So I definitely want to change that. A lot of what I've been up to lately has been a lot of digital drawing and learning that over the past year, and then whenever I haven't been doing that, learning more about making videos, also doing a lot of music production and trying to get more in tune with what I'm trying to make, I suppose. As a result, that's kind of manifested in 3 original tracks that I will be sharing that will be my debut tracks, which is kind of crazy. Like, I'll be sharing those on Spotify, and that's gonna be a very big step for me. And while crafting my sound, I've been practicing by remixing different songs that already exist. Things like Fireflies by Owl City. I'd like to make myself believe. Same Old Blues by Fantagram. Sweater Weather by The Neighborhood. All those kinds of projects have been really fun because they've allowed me to just learn more and more about remixing. You know, among all the different remixes, I wasn't really planning on remixing the iCarly theme song. So I figured, hey, this is already pretty absurd. Why don't I share a little bit about how I made it? A little bit of context, I love house music and dance music was really what got me into electronic music in the first place. And I love chill house music, so I was really inspired to make something in that genre anyway. So how do I end up with iCarly? I like taking things that are kind of funny or kind of weird and trying to make them into something that sounds kind of interesting or different or unconventional at the least. And examples of me exploring that sort of thing are things like my Kesha remix that I did where I was remixing TikTok. It's kind of weird and that's kind of fun because it challenges me to find what I like in something, even if I might not really just like the thing. No disrespect, I actually really loved the original song when it came out, so it was kind of nostalgic for me. And iCarly weirdly is nostalgic for me too, because I don't really love that show. So I thought it was weird hearing the song again, the theme song. I was like, and then I looked it up and I saw the acapella that was available and I was like, maybe that could be something. And that to me is just a great learning exercise because it shows me more about how BeatMaker 3, the app that I'm using to produce music on the iPad, works, and then also what I want to achieve in my creative process with making music, especially with house music, something that can be traditionally simplistic, but also because it's simplistic, that makes it harder because now you got to make it really good if you're not doing a bunch of extra things. And it's got to have a nice foundation to it that shows that the fundamentals of music production are understood and that you can make something that people actually want to listen to. So enough rambling, I want to dive into kind of what I was doing with the specifics. So I've got my project in BeatMaker 3, and if I go to the timeline, I can see this whole thing. And I've got my drums, I've got iCarly Brazil, it's like the iCarly Brazil meme, my string section, my sub bass, sparkle textures. This is kind of how it looks, and how I got here was, it started with me finding the acapella. And so I go here, I'm gonna play what the original acapella sounds like. I know, you see. So that's kind of how that sounds. And so I go, so that's really how the sample kind of sounds chopped up. Then I settled on a tempo as I was starting to build the drums. So if I go to the drums here, then I have my drum sounds. I have things like, it's a nice kick drum. And with house music particularly, I like to make stuff that's around 117 beats per minute to maybe 122 or 125 at the most. I don't like going over that if I'm doing 4 on the floor rhythms because it just sounds a little corny to me. That's just my personal preference. I like to make something that's got a little bit more groove with the rhythm. If you can find that spot in between slow and fast, that kind of like nice pulsing thing. So if I like, right, it's not too fast, it's not too slow, it's kind of got that. I find that to be just more satisfying for me. And what I also like to do is I like to get a little weird with the arrangement of that drum, so something like that, that's fun for me as well because it just kind of makes the bass drum a little bit more dynamic for me personally. I like to use the performance pads, which you can see me using. That's the best way for me to personally create the beats. The performance pads are just really easy for me to get used to getting my hands on with the sounds directly. In BeatMaker 3, you have some sounds that are available, but I also use other apps to generate those sounds, and if you're trying to make something in BeatMaker 3 as well, that's probably going to be what you're going to end up doing, unless you buy sound packs from the store. Now that I explained how I got my drum samples in there and what I like to do with my different rhythms, let's try and recreate what I was kind of doing with the beat. So once I had that there, I had to start thinking about other elements. The strings were important to get to because I knew I wanted synthesized strings of some kind to kind of make for a weird atmosphere and ambiance in the track. And with the bass, I created the bass for the drums, but I also sidechained it with the drums as well. And sidechaining means linking two or more tracks together and then having one track signal override the other track. So if I have a bass with drums, what's going to happen is the kick drum is going to cut into the bass, and the bass is going to kind of swell around that kick drum. And if I solo, you can really hear that. I also have the attack on the sub bass adjusted a lot, so it will also work as sort of a manual sidechain, I found. It's kind of a little trick that I've come up with when making stuff like this. Once I had that stuff in order, I wanted to create some lead synth and some organ synth to accompany the track, and these are custom synth sounds that I've made in a separate app. It kind of sounded like this. It was definitely a huge learning experience trying to corral all of that together, and I had so much fun making it. It was a really interesting process, something that I'm not used to doing, but now I want to take other theme songs and try different things with them. Ultimately, the end result was something that I was happy with, and that's kind of what matters to me, especially I can be perfectionist, which is just kind of also insecurity. So getting to a place where I feel comfortable with sharing a thing, I'm good. I'm totally fine with that. So that's a little bit about how I ended up with the thing that I made. That is this iCarly Brazil remix thing. If you're interested in BeatMaker 3 tutorials, I created an official tutorial series for the developers of BeatMaker 3, which is on their page, and I will link to that somewhere, and you can learn how the app works and how you can make your own thing. I didn't really think it was necessary for me to do that here since I made those, but I will make more specific BeatMaker 3 tutorials if that's requested. And the first one is how to connect the Launchpad to BeatMaker 3 and how to use that. That will be coming up very soon. So until then, thanks so much for watching, and thanks so much for sticking with me if you have. Until next time, see you guys later.